the Ad Council.
Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America, this is Inside the Huddle with Nebraska Football Hall of Famer Jay Foreman on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
Welcome back to another Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman. Myself and Harrison are pleased to be with you on another early Sunday morning. But look, when you have a lot of recruiting news and Husker football right around the corner, you make sacrifices and definitely be here early and often. Inside the Huddle is brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. It offers treatments for all types of pain. So if you want to get back to experiencing as little pain as possible, give them a call at 402-484-6677. They are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I will be promoting them on my Twitter as well. Harrison, good morning.
Morning, man.
How you doing?
Not too bad. I'm getting used to it.
Yeah,
the old
I know.
wake-up call. It takes a couple of weeks, but now I'm kind of getting used to it. Full swing now.
Exactly, because once you start getting up early and then like a weekend that you don't have it, then you be like, man.
Then you're waking up at 6 a.m. Not knowing what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Just sitting there staring at the walls. But we're here, and it's not too bad getting up. And it's a beautiful morning. And one other thing that's been pretty pleasing, I guess, Harrison, we mentioned us getting up early.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like every week that we come in here, Nebraska's had some new commitments, right? And so, it was kind of a, weird, not a weird week, but obviously, last week, Carter Nelson just committed.
Mm-hmm.
What actually didn't just commit, it was this week because,
down in Ainsworth.
Yeah, little birdie was telling me that he was going to do it, but, you want to make sure till it's fully commitment. And then you had a little bit of the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had a Nebraska recruit, I think, from Omaha Central that committed to Illinois. And then it seems like out of nowhere, right? As soon as the Nebraska recruiting, it always seems like, Nebraska recruiting was doing well.
Mm-hmm.
But then everybody started complaining. It's either the first complaint was, all right, too many kids from Texas. Well, then we get 2 kids from Bellevue West. And then obviously, Carter Nelson, who's the number 1 player. So then that subsided because it's kind of like even Steven. And, look, right now, come one, come all. It doesn't matter where you're from. And then, we got to remedy that. Then it was like, okay, well, we're not getting enough D linemen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Terrence Knighton got his wish. Got Carlin Jones out of Bay City, Texas. And that's the fruits of your labor. So if you guys have listened to Old School, and me and DP, prognosticated, how many commitments they'd have after a big weekend and after that big camp that they had in Texas. DP kind of was alluding that it should be right away, but I was like, man, it takes a little while. You gotta go down there, really see, who, the players, do they match up to what probably the coaches that they know,
mm-hmm.
Are they for real? Get to know them, probably get them up on campus, I'm assuming. And then see where they stand. And so then that's where you see where you get Carlin Jones, a big kid out of Bay City, Texas, kind of a defensive end, defensive tackle, multiple position guy,
mm-hmm.
Has some good size, comes from a good school. And so it brings some, playmaking ability to that defensive line room. And so, one thing I will say about Matt Rule and those guys is that they've attacked the offensive line. They had a big man out of Colorado that has the right mentality. I think they're starting to get guys, at least on the offensive line, I can say, that have a little bit more of a nasty attitude. Yeah. And they like to finish. And
Jake Peters is one of those guys that excites me just for that reason. Undersized, but he's here because the film shows like he's finishing on safeties out there every play.
Right. And so, like, okay, we'll talk about Jake Peters, whereas, like, a lot of schools kind of were, like, hesitant to offer him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wasn't 6'5", 6'4". He's probably 6'2.5".
Mm-hmm.
But his motor and his mentality is what you want. And I'm assuming, again, having asked and they're the coaches, they're highly paid for it. I think assuming that he would be a guy that you could not plug and play, but a guy that you think that would eventually, work himself into playing center. Reason why is the athletic ability, like you said, to get down, to get all the way to the safety position.
Mm-hmm.
comparing him to somebody that's already in the NFL getting paid, but that's what, pretty much helped get Cam Jurgens paid and get noticed. And so when you're out there and trying to run some toss plays and trying to have different blocking schemes, for the same play, when you have a center that has athletic ability, but then he has the ability to snap it and pull and then also block in space, that gives you like 6 more plays in your playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just run plays, it's pass plays too, because if you watch Jason Kelce, who's going to go in the Hall of Fame, I assume, or have a chance to go. When you watch him, even in pass protection, so he's able to snap the ball, and he's so quick that he's able to actually pick up a blitzer from an outside blitzer. So you can slide the line, and so you can create a little bit of confusion with some high level athletes, and so Nebraska's done a really good job of attacking a weak spot that's been pretty weak for Nebraska for quite some time. I mean, and whether people want to blame the last coaching staff, you want to blame talent, I think it's usually a little bit of both, but also, the predecessor, I think, like with Mike Riley and those guys, did a decent job. I think Nebraska's offensive line under Frost probably had more Mike Riley players than his, and that's because they were older. Mm-hmm. Now, let's be honest. Let's not sit up here and act like he just took a bunch of freshmen. You had Farmer and those guys that knew how to play or had played a new scheme, and then that's when you saw him roll. That's where you see Divine Exebo and Stanley Morgan, and obviously Adrian, getting off, and that's when the offense for the last 6-7 games was pretty good, mm-hmm. but still didn't win games. So at the end of the day, I think Matt Rule and group are really trying to attack the offense line, and where they're at. To be honest with you, a lot of these kids are really good. Kids coming out of high school. But again, I always try to give this warning and not trying to be Debbie Downer. Of the class, even like this big 39 that he brought in, and where those transfer portal guys and, mm-hmm. and obviously guys that he was able to fill the roster, not all of them are going to make it. Not all of them are going to stay. Some kids are going to be like, man, competition maybe is too tough for me and I need to go to another school, or they might not want to wait to play. And in reality, they might not have developed fast enough. Or you have guys on your present roster that you expected to step up that don't, and then some of these young guys take their spots. Now, coming with this 2024, not all of them are going to be successful, and not in the way that recruiting is now. Not all of them will last all 4 or 5 years. And obviously, the big commitment, for them is obviously Carter Nelson. But I also want to, say, hey, look, he's the most talented tight end in the room. Now he's probably the smallest, as far as he needs to get in the weight room.
Yeah.
But also I'd say, you don't need to hold him back based on something that you already knew. You knew regardless that he's going to need a year or two in the weight room. Well, that doesn't mean that he can't get open and be a position flexible guy. Whereas you're not going to put him on the end line as an 18-year-old kid trying to block a senior from Michigan.
Right.
That's not, no, I mean, might not even have seniors that can do that. You know what I'm saying? So here you're going to have a kid from Ainsworth that's never really blocked.
Yeah.
Because he's come from 8-man, and then that's what you're going to use against him. So I think the best thing is to focus on what he does in a positive manner and allow that to get him on the field early. And then obviously special teams is going to be a big, huge deal. But again, all those guys and all those kids might not end up being. I mean, there's even back in 94 when I came in, there was a guy that was on a scholarship. He was gone within 2 weeks.
Just because he's the talent around him?
He just kind of hey, this type of football was not for him. Literally.
I see it. I could, especially in those, we get to that 94, 95 era. Yeah. I can see
it was
some
hard,
guys
man. I mean, you question, am I really good enough? Mm-hmm. That's number one. I mean, that's the most anxiety that you'll have. And regardless of if Carter Nelson came in, I mean, Grant Wistrom was the number one, I think, player in the nation. If not, I know he was the number one defensive player in the nation mm-hmm. when he came in. He was a USA Today and everything. He was all everything. And I'm sure I was roommates with Grant, and I know that he, everybody has. Look, you go and you play 4 years in high school, or you're in high school for 4 years, so you work your way up your whole adolescent life. This is because when you're going to the high school games, this is what you want to do. This is mm-hmm. what you want to play. So that is like and that's a huge step, right? To be able to be successful in high school football. Then you're a huge step enough to play college football. Well, at that point in time, Nebraska was Georgia and Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State and Michigan, or whoever it is. So you do wonder, am I really good enough?
Yeah.
Because you see some guys that you've seen on national TV that just got hosed against Florida State, and where do you compare?
Mm-hmm.
Let alone the unknown of who else is here. Because it's not just 1 year. You know, Nebraska at that point in time was not just one and done. They had been good for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Longer than that. And so there is anxiety for these young men when they get here. The ones that are even here now, or, that was 2023 and kickoff. They still have anxiety. They still will have anxiety because even if they got here for summer workouts, they didn't get to go through spring. But here comes 2 days. This is a new coaching staff. So even if they visited here 2 years ago, they probably were more familiar with who was on the team. Now you don't know. There's 39 new faces. There's guys that you thought that would be around, that could have been around, that are gone. There's 39 new faces. You don't know how good they are. And so I always, try to warn people to pump the brakes on thinking that we have it all solved. But I think Matt Rule and those guys are smart enough and have had enough experience that they know, look, you got to go out and have a plan and recruit the best guys you can. And they know whether, they're going to recruit, coach, develop everybody as much as they can and as possible. But they do know there are kids that just, you could do everything for them. You could have that checklist and then they still want to go somewhere else because maybe it's not instant gratification. And that's just the difference in the kids and the situation.
Yeah.
Right. And so another thing, Harrison, people always talk about the transfer portal, and it is hard. But I think if you have a realistic view of it, and use it the right way, it could be, kind of you like the Nebraska to get there where we're choosing, not being chosen. And what that means is Alabama and Georgia. I don't even know if Georgia's even winning the transfer. You never hear anybody saying I'm transferring to Georgia and Georgia. I think they're always they got their guys.
Yeah, they got their picks. They don't need to lean on it as hard like Michigan State did the 1 year.
Right. You like to be like Alabama, right?
Mm-hmm.
They went into the transfer portal 2022 and got Gibbs. Specifically a player for a role. Boom. They went in this year, got the quarterback from Notre Dame because the offensive coordinator came down because Bill O'Brien went to back to Rico's Patriots. You want to be the chooser. You can kind of say yes and no, and when you know that if I'm looking for Harrison, when that phone rings and you got Nick Saban on the other line, it's all business. And, 9 times out of 10, when you get down there to Tuscaloosa, you're not going to say no because you see what could happen on the outcome versus I'm sure Matt Rule and those guys are, more choosy, but versus if you're going there and trying to solve multiple problems and you're kind of just throwing money and attention at it. That's different because then the one that screams of desperation, but then two, it also lets you know you have a lot of problems that you aren't willing to solve or can't solve on your roster. Now, if you are on the so-called hot seat, you do have to go into the transfer portal and try to make a quick fix, a la Kansas State when I was in college and they signed like all JUCO kids. That was kind of like a first kind of glimpse into somewhat of a transfer portal, but it was Bill Snyder recruited a bunch of JUCO kids to turn the program around.
Yeah, that's how Fred Hoiberg did it at Iowa State.
Right.
He was kind of a pioneer in that. Let's get these JUCO kids, and he flipped that program around.
Right, and it was a quick fix, right? But then you got to be able to mix in some younger kids because you always have to develop, and that's what Bill Snyder did a really good job of. He did it for a couple of years, but he still recruited enough guys that he knew that they needed some time, and then he kind of was like, pretty good stalwart. And so sometimes when you're on the hot seat, which obviously Matt Rule isn't, that you have to go in there and try to hit to give yourself another year. I think you get there if the timing's bad and the development hasn't came to fruition. And I think the last staff is a little bit unique because of COVID. It just hurt them. It just would, I wouldn't say that was like a death sentence, but it definitely. I think and I keep saying this, when Frost was hired, I always say his runway was unlimited. Yeah, it was a 7-year contract, but it pretty much was a 70-year contract.
I think teams that didn't have their foundation set yet like a Georgia and Alabama, they could go through that COVID era.
Oh,
but
yeah.
the teams, because like we saw the same thing with Fred Hoiberg. I mean, you could go
Yeah.
across the sport. Like that COVID year, the roster just wasn't there.
Right.
It was really hard to do. And then that's why it's so important to get that development, get those high school kids in there. And that's how you can kind of work through it. But if the foundation wasn't there and you don't have those high school kids, yeah, you get that Scott Frost, that Fred Hoiberg era that you just kind of want to forget about.
Yeah. I mean, it just, you're playing, you're going into a fight. The equation is against Mike Tyson, one hand behind your back.
Yeah.
You ain't got a chance in hell to win. And it hurts it hurts Nebraska's programs, but specifically the football program. Like I said, when Scott was hired, the runway was unlimited. It really was unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
He had a chance to coach here forever. He really did.
Yeah.
And he had a chance to be at Nebraska and really call every single shot. He would have been at the point where even if you had an AD, he would have been like, he got to pick that, if you win, he pretty much was running. I mean, he really was running the show because he was, obviously went and had Hank Bounds involved in the new project and stuff like that. And he wasn't no longer employed here and stuff, so forth and so on. But the runway was long. So then therefore you should play the long game. You brought him in and developed the roster. So we went extremely young. I mentioned this before in another Inside the Huddle. And then boom, COVID hit. So even teams like Minnesota, Purdue, obviously Wisconsin, and Ohio State and Michigan and those guys in Penn State and those guys, they're in a whole different atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to think, let's look at Minnesota, PJ Fleck, even though they had COVID regulations way worse or more strict in Minnesota versus here statewide, they were able to come together and beat Nebraska with absolutely no practice because of the foundation and the winning that they had done 2 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
And they had more veteran players. They had one of the best running backs, in the Big Ten, and one of the quarterbacks that's been there forever because he had hair when he came in as a freshman and was completely bald by the time he left.
Yeah.
And you had an NFL receiver, eventually NFL tight end, numerous offensive linemen getting picked. And then you had defensive line, and then they hit on a couple of their transfer portal guys.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, all they wouldn't say all they needed, but they had a plan, and they were able to do what they always had done, and that's run the ball and get better on defense. And so I think, when you're thinking about this in the transfer portal and in recruiting, fans and stuff, just be a little bit, I want to say cautious, but realistic that, hey, look, we're getting all this talent. Let's let them develop. Let's not think we need to take a kid from Ainsworth. Now, if he's ready, I'm all for it. But take him from Ainsworth, and then next thing you know, he's, Rob Gronkowski and Travis Kelce year one. And then if he doesn't show out in year one, that's a waste of scholarship. Let's throw him back in the portal and try to get somebody else. That's not the mentality you need. I think you're able to, especially in the tight end room, stack some talent, and let them develop on a pretty, I think, a rapid pace, but not too, I wouldn't say warp speed pace, because, playing in the Big Ten is a lot different than playing anywhere else. And so, I think it's, a good week for Nebraska. I think one of the things we'll talk about in the next segment, before we end this one, is your thoughts on some of the tight ends, or one of the tight ends in the room, talking about he's a super alpha. And have you ever met anybody that's a super alpha? And have you ever, this is what I want you to think about.
Okay.
And if you have, do they tell you you're super alpha? There's a difference. And okay. I do think there's a difference. So, I think that's, some of the things we need. I mean, I think it's more tongue in cheek. And then, I guess I don't know where all these quotes came from, because then I guess they asked Matt Rule about Colorado, and it's like Matt Rule, something about Deion Sanders' luggage and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that, and is that something that could be, bulletin board material? I think Deion obviously has some health issues and stuff like that he needs to worry about. And, always somebody asked me about it, and I said, well, the biggest thing is this. That's cool to talk about Colorado, but we play Minnesota. No, August 31st.
Yep.
That's the game.
Mm-hmm.
That.
We've seen what happens when we walk in there
at 7 p.m. You're going to be looking across a team that, if you watch their spring game, it would. I mean, they had their spring game. I'm sure it was cold outside.
Mm-hmm.
Their spring game might have had 60 people there. It might have been just a bunch of alumni that might have wanted to bring Uncle Bob and all them in there. I mean, you've seen dudes in Minnesota forever. It looked like they had their own drinks in their in their Yetis.
Yeah.
I saw a guy with a flannel, hat and some boots. Looked like he just came off the farm. So I don't know if his relative was playing. They was in their indoor facility.
Yep.
And there couldn't have been. Okay, take the staff out of it. Like the people that you need, trainers and all that. There couldn't have been 100 people there. There's no way, unless they have seating up that we didn't see.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I know the videos you're talking about. I don't
at the most 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm overestimating because
yeah.
I'm saying maybe they have, if you have an indoor facility, they might have a track and some seating up there. And look, they have to film,
mm-hmm.
top down. So I'm assuming that for them to have a spring game indoors, there had to be some more people there, but there wasn't. But I'm guesstimating the most was 1,000, and they went at it
mm-hmm.
From a physical standpoint, like they were playing at the Rose Bowl, and there was no fancy plays, there was no music, or they did have music. I'm not trying to say like PJ Fleck had them in there, and it was like prison football, so it wasn't like the longest mile and stuff, but it was extremely competitive. It was extremely physical, and it just seemed like rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota had 4 running backs. It's like the Minnesota goes and gets guys, and it's like they just all look the same.
Yeah, they have that same offense, simple package, but try and stop it.
But the running backs, though,
yeah,
none of them are seem like they're over 6 feet tall. About 5'10" to 6 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
215 to 225. Short area quickness. They must run inside, outside zone 1,000 times at practice. Literally.
Yeah.
These dudes might run inside, outside zone at 60. When they get back together, they just line up and they're running right wedge blocking. And so, that's the game that we need to worry about and be focused on. That's what you're training for.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, week 0 too, you got to get up. Like you can't be wasting time on a week 0.
No, and I like that though.
Yeah.
I like to play. I mean, the one thing about this, and we'll talk a little about this in the second segment because we're up against the clock, is like, I want your opinion, and too, is like I never realized, like when we played. Now, granted, we were obviously one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, one, if not, we were the best. I mean, but I just, regardless if I was at Nebraska or somewhere else, I'd never thought about. When I looked at the schedule and we only had 12 games, I wanted 14. If we had 14, I wanted 16. Now, granted, that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure if we played 16 regular season games, when I did it in the NFL, like you get a little worn out, but not really because the coaches took care of us. And we were just on the front end of treatment and taking care of your body. Nobody, really know the benefits of getting in the cold tub and massages and all that. When I first started, coming back to Nebraska after I retired, say like 2010 or 11, I was so surprised that the players and a little bit of the media, but more of the players, because the media gets it from the players. They're worried about what time they played, what time of year they played, and who they played. I'm like, you're here to play football. This should be something that you love. Like, you should be wanting to play 12 Minnesotas.
Mm-hmm.
You should be wanting to play 12 Michigans. You should be wanting to see where you're at. You should be able to want it to compete and then, get better as you go. Because I think the better competition you play, if you start out losing, if you really compare, you're going to find a way to win and find a way to kind of, lessen that gap. And so, like you said, week 0, you better start thinking about it. It is on like neck bones. So that's a good first segment. Second segment, we're going to jump into a little bit of who's an alpha, who's not an alpha. And what do you think about game times and how Nebraska prepares moving forward? This is Jay Foreman and Harrison on Inside the Huddle. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
Working at Continental in Lincoln isn't a job, it's a career. And right now they've raised wages again and they're hiring for production operators at $24.11 per hour, which grows to $28.27 per hour within 3 years. Skilled trade positions now start at $32.76 per hour with opportunities to make more based on certifications. Continental also has salary jobs available and great benefits, plus medical and prescription costs at very low premiums. Dental, vision, and life insurance are offered at no premium cost to the associates, with increased bonuses and vacation for new hires. To learn more or to apply, go to continental-jobs.com with keyword Lincoln. Come work at Continental today.
Hey, you got any gum?
Yeah, check my backpack.
What's this?
Oh, that's naloxone. It can reverse an opioid overdose. I decided to always keep it on me after my friend almost died. It saved his life.
I'm so sorry. That makes me want to have it with me too.
You totally should. Check the pharmacy. It was actually really easy to get and it's easy to use.
I definitely will. Thanks.
Paid for by the CDC, sponsored by Nebraska DHHS, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
Quick question. Where does the term dog pile? Because I've never seen a pile of dogs in my life. I've never seen that. If we've ever seen just driving down the road and someone's like, oh, there's 12 dogs on top of each other. So where does dog pile come from?
Well, that's a good question.
And that is a standard.
That's a good question.
If you say dog pile to anyone, they know it.
Yeah.
It's dog pile. Never seen a pile of dogs. Never in my life.
I don't know if I want to know where that comes from.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning.
Getting experience to jumpstart a meaningful career can be difficult, and education can cost a fortune. Luckily, AmeriCorps can be the solution. With AmeriCorps, you'll earn a stipend and education award while helping people. Plus, you'll gain professional skills and make connections to help you build your career. If you're ready to start a career you can be proud of, visit serve.nebraska.gov/service to find a program for you. Paid for by Serve Nebraska, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
I'm Chris Jakovic. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakovic, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Whether you like fishing together or fishing to get away, for the thrill of reeling in a big one, or just going out to have a good time, on the banks of your local pond, at a bend in a river, or on one of our many lakes and reservoirs, you'll always find the perfect place to cast a line, here, beneath Nebraska skies. Start planning your next fishing adventure today at letsfishnebraska.com. Sponsored by Nebraska Game and Parks, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is your captain. We are going to be experiencing some slight turbulence. Please fasten your... Oh, hold on. Just got a video of my cat.
Imagine the pilot of an airplane was as confident as you are texting and driving. Seems kind of crazy when you put it like that.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
The Ticket Water Cooler.
Typically, you kind of think of Nebraska as far as in-state recruiting as might not get the skill position players, but you can pepper in some offensive linemen and maybe a linebacker here and there. This class is led by its in-state skill position players now. I mean, you're thinking down the line, you could 3 or 4 years from now have Daniel Kalen lining up with Davon Holland, Isaiah McMorris, and now Carter Nelson. Those are all your skill positions.
Keeping the highly talented, highly ranked players that are in the state with you at the home state school is a step in the right direction.
You're listening to Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
We are back after a quick break. Inside the Huddle, Jay Foreman, Harrison, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Go see them. can get you back feeling right without of all the easy fixes of I will just say narcotics or opioids and stuff. So, and they give you a good game plan. That's what I like, Harrison. I don't like doctors. I really don't like dentists, and but I don't like going to the doctor's office. But I felt at home there, and they had a game plan for me, and that's where I felt like it was a good match because whether I'm a creature of habit, I like to have some sort of worst case scenario, best case scenario, and something in between. They did all three, and then also they weren't just trying to keep you in house, and definitely have a book of people that they can send you to give you some good options as well. So I definitely appreciate Dr. Finn and Razdan over there. Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. But back to it. We have some, I wouldn't say breaking news, but we had something of a
it was late news.
Late news. And also, breaking news, but unique news that Nebraska got another commit. This one, a 4-star receiver out of Miami, which hadn't been on anybody's radar and kind of came out of nowhere. And I think if there's ever an example of this coaching staff and their recruiting and having, I guess sometimes you've heard of like covert recruits coming in where they don't want anybody else to know he's on campus, and then you hear like, oh, he's 70-something% in Nebraska, or he's on campus, some big time recruit. Ja'Cory Barney Jr. had been on campus, so it wasn't a secret, but his last official visit was with the University of Miami, his hometown team, a team that's really making a lot of noise in recruiting. And they just broke ground, or officially said they were going to break ground on a $100 million new facility, sports facility specifically for football. And all things had pointed to him going to the University of Miami from the recruiting services down there. I think it was like 80%.
Yeah.
Well, it was like my mom says, sometimes up jumps the cat, and he commits to Nebraska late yesterday, and it was over. He picked Nebraska over Miami and Texas A&M, who were the
crystal ball projections had him. Nebraska was on the bottom of all those lists.
It was Miami, Texas A&M, then Nebraska, and with again Miami being his last official visit, Texas A&M being before that. He was in Nebraska in June. The one thing that I think rang true when they interviewed him, he says Nebraska was nothing that he expected. Overall, he thought it was just going to be cornfields and then a football stadium, right? And look,
is that what you had kind of coming in? I guess because it's different era though. Nebraska was
different
a
era,
different team.
and it was different. Really, to be honest with you, I wanted to get a full ride, and I wanted to get an education, and I wanted to go win.
Okay,
right. But I did
at that point in time.
But I tell you, I left pleasantly surprised. I'll tell you this: I didn't think there was any black people in Nebraska. I just didn't. Just thinking Nebraska. I knew 2 kids that were Nebraska fans. One is a diehard, and they were white as can be. But they were cool. So I was like, okay. Then I didn't have a problem with it, but I was pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised by Lincoln. Pleasantly surprised by the little diversity that they had in Lincoln, and then I'll see more in Omaha. And it's even, to a different magnitude now, because he said that, he thought it was going to be cornfields, and it was nothing like that. There's actually, and compared to, I wouldn't say to Miami, because obviously Miami's nightlife is probably the best in the nation as far as if you're down there, and especially if Miami's winning, you're bigger than the Dolphins. No offense, Jake Sorensen, but, and then Texas A&M, College Station isn't anything to write home about. It isn't. I've been down there. And so when you come to Lincoln and you compare it to Norman, Oklahoma, Tuscaloosa, Clemson for sure, it's a bigger city than all of those, right? And then you put on the fanfare, and he said going around all weekend with the fanfare and the people, throughout town that was recruited coming up and just talking to you. See, that's a welcoming type of atmosphere that just all natural here in Nebraska. And I think the other thing that really helped as well is Corey Collier coming here, and he came from Florida, but all these Florida kids know each other. They grew up playing against each other, with each other, 7-on-7. Dwight Boodle came up or is committed. Willis McGahee as well. Miami ties, right? His dad being a great running back there, and him choosing Nebraska. They know, they keep track of each other. Then you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Word of mouth. Probably hit each other up on DMs. What'd you think? How'd you like this coach? How did they treat you? To compare notes. And then when you see 3 or 4 guys that you know, right? And I like it's different. Like I call them grade levels. Collier had been to Florida, so he'd already tracked that. He went to Florida, left Florida, came to Nebraska. Like, you right? Even Chief Borders, right?
Yeah.
Him. And then you think of Dwight Boodle, somebody that he knows, right? That he's probably maybe went against at some point in time in these 7-on-7s or spring camps and stuff like that. And then Willis McGahee, who's another position, but with Miami ties. So you have like a good, like, kind of a mentor system, or, that where you can reach out to they can reach out to each other and they're at different levels. So I think that's what really turned around. Then you got to give it to Garrett McGuire, obviously recruited him pretty hard.
Yeah, I think he gave him a lot of credit in that article too.
Yeah, I mean, look, as much as they say that he's a young coach, you like to think that I'm hoping that the young, being so young, he definitely can relate to him. But I think Garrett McGuire he's a football coach. I mean, that's all he knows. I mean, look, his dad's a coach. I mean, that's all riding in them cars. That's all he talked about. So I think he's a little bit ahead of the curve. And I think with his, energy and knows what he wants. And look, if I'm Garrett McGuire, this is my first job. He had nothing to lose. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things with Matt Rule too, is like, some people might look at it as a negative, but I see it as positive. He brings a lot of guys that, he's kind of gives them their first shot.
Sure.
I think
Everybody
you saw that a
needs
lot
first
at
shot.
Baylor, and those guys almost work harder for it.
Right. Well, I
they
mean,
see that opportunity and what they were given presented to them. And it's worked out pretty well for him. So I'm not shooting it down by any means.
If these guys that are younger on the staff, and like I said, I think Matt Rule did a good job of the 4 main jobs. They're Wiley veterans: Matt Rule, Satterfield, White, and the special teams coordinator Foley. All those are your guys that are kind of like your mafia bosses. Really,
they've seen it.
That's what they are. They're the mafia. They're the conglomerate. That they're wily guys, and then you got some young guys that are looking for the first chance. But I think on the surface, now mind you, these guys got to do it right, whether you're the full head position coach or a analyst or somebody that they brought in, is that I think he's looking at the person and what they're made of, because those guys, Matt Rule and all those guys have been there before. They have. I mean, look, just like you're recruiting players, you're looking at the person as much or more as the player. That's going to tell you more. So him believing in his staff, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he knows them a lot better than we do. I think it's the positives of having a young coach is you have somebody that can relate to them. I mean, it just seems like he looks like he can pass for high school. I mean, no offense, Garrett, but it's somebody that kids can relate to. The only negative is you don't have the experience, but I'd like to think that Matt Rule is coaching his coaches. That's what I think. A good head coach develops his coaches. Continue. I mean, Nick Saban does. He wants those guys. I mean, I remember I watched a YouTube of Nick Saban. They talked about a new defense that they were putting in and a new offense that they were putting in, and how many times he expected his coaches to go through it, and the fact that they didn't go through it through the nightly walkthrough before the daily walkthrough the next day, that he got on the coaches, and so he scrapped it for the next. So they had to change the whole next day, and he's like, I want you guys to see the magnitude of not doing this and taking 5 minutes so they can see it and go through it and sleep on it. You know what I'm saying? So right there, he's coaching his coaches. So if Matt Rule's doing that, I think it's good. But anyways, back to him, to get him to commit, and is like, I get, like you said, Ja'Cory Barney, that his family didn't know. I think it's a big get. I think it's a good thing that they got it more speed. Again, like I just said, whether it's Carter Nelson, Jones, you got to come here and get them to develop. And, I think, Nebraska before didn't have great luck with when we got all those Miami guys. We got 6 of them. I think like all 4 or maybe all 6 left, like 6 months.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of, they saw the opportunity. And then again, COVID hit and they just got homesick, and a lot of them haven't progressed. I think they all should have stayed because they definitely had chances here and didn't give it enough chance. And so maybe they came up here because they thought they were just going to start and play a couple years and go to the league, and that's their choice, and that's on them. Really doesn't have anything to do with the staff that's being realistic as a player. But one of the most interesting things of Ja'Cory Barney is this. He talked about Daniel Kalen being there on his official visit. And the one thing he said about Daniel Kalen, or multiple things he said, is he liked his character. See, I like that because you got some peer recruiting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he really believes in Nebraska. So, and if you have been in those situations, you know, as a athlete, where somebody's if they're telling you what the coaches were telling you to say versus this is what he believes. And granted, Daniel Kalen's from Nebraska, but something that Daniel Kalen said, or the things that he said, he knew was coming from the heart. So that helped him, commit as well. He was looking at it. This is going to be my quarterback. And the one thing I like about him, as of right now, recruiting, obviously committing here, is that he committed after Hall and McMorris committed. That lets me know that he's not scared of competition, right?
Yeah.
Also, I think sometimes around here, people can turn the page too quickly.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we just got 2023. They're just barely on campus, right?
Yep.
People forget you got Jaden Doss, Lloyd from Omaha West Side.
Mm-hmm.
Them two dudes can play. Remember how much fanfare Malachi Coleman had, right? You ain't heard nothing. I mean, right? It was Malachi Coleman. When's he going to commit? This, and this. 6'4",
Yeah, about
6'5".
a month of publicity straight. I felt like
2 months. I mean, really. Remember?
Yeah,
because even during this season,
yeah, you're right.
What's he going to do? He was going here on official visit. Remember, he was supposed to go to Miami. Then it got changed. Then he didn't do it. Then he came, right? And then obviously Mickey got fired, and then Matt Rule came. Then then you hear, well, okay, Malachi Coleman's in. Well, now he's reconsidering. Then he went down to Nebraska. And remember, I think they had the thing that where him and Coach Rule were playing pool or something like that. And then the emojis came out. Then everybody thought he was coming. Then it was like, okay, we're going to commit. Remember, his commitment was supposed to be one date, then another.
Yeah, he pushed it back.
Yeah, pushed it back. Well, you ain't heard nothing from him, right? Not nothing from him. Nothing about him. You got to go back and look. Like, Jaden Dawes from Kansas City, he's a dude. He's a dude. I'm just telling you right now. He's a dude.
I'm excited to see. He's got the measurements.
Listen, he's got that dog in him. That's number one. He is more polished than anybody that's in the class. I think Lloyd is up there, but I think he's more polished just because he's been playing exclusively football. So you got two guys right there that are hyper competitive. Straight up dogs. One, you know what I mean? Because you have one of the best for his, I guess, age group, Lloyd, as far as his track prowess, right? So he's individually motivated. Both of his parents were Division I at Nebraska. I think his mom is one of the best track female athletes, from here at the University of Nebraska.
Yeah, I think she still holds some records.
And the dad as well, and then has been trained. And here's the thing about him is. He's been when you are dominant on a national level, coming here doesn't do it. He's looking at guys that are thinking about going to the Olympic trials in 3 or 4 years, and he's staring them down from Omaha, Nebraska. So you got to think this 2023 class. Okay, look as we're supposed to. They already committed. It's like you're already here.
Yep.
We already got you in our back pocket. So whether you like us or not, we're going to whatever. But these guys haven't played yet, and we're getting more excited about. Two kids from Bellevue West and Miami, as we should. But you got Malachi Coleman, right? We just talked about. He's a 4-star, right? 6'4", and anywhere that who knows how fast he can run, but is obviously under 4.5 and 4.4.
Yep.
You got Demetrius Bell, who's an athlete, but look as a receiver, right? And he's a 3-star, high 3-star. Then you got Jaden Doss, okay, 6 feet, pretty much 195, 200, okay, from Missouri. Can straight up play. He can, I always say he can deal, right? And so that's a guy I think that's probably the most polished coming in. And then you got Malachi Coleman. Then you get Ishmael Smith Flores, who's not really a receiver, but he's kind of like that hybrid, right? And then you got Bryce Turner. I mean, on his 24/7 and on 3 profile, it's in track with 2 gold medals around his chest.
Yeah, he's a 3-star basically just because he's more track guy is what. But that's Matt Rule's philosophy. He sees the athleticism.
Speed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But he's shown a bit physical.
Yep.
Okay. Then you got Jalen Lloyd, athlete, 5'10", 160. He's only 160 based on he's a jumper and obviously, runs track. But he is so smooth. He's taller than 5'10" because I've seen him before. But when you think he's smooth, and whether he's a defensive back, and he's definitely smooth as far as playing receiver, and he can run multitude of routes, and he creates separate. He has legitimate speed. That means his track speed is what you see. So you got to think as far as we're getting excited about these. And look at Jeremiah Charles as well. I don't want to forget anybody because then they might get mad, start blowing up on the text message talking about this old dude on here ain't giving us no love. But as great as it get these guys, look, 2023 got some dudes in there as well. So, but it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a good dive into who Nebraska has on the skill positions. Obviously, big get. So we're going to go to a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to touch on a little bit of alpha and a little bit of stuff like that moving forward as we get closer and closer, 60 days away till we play Minnesota. Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle. We'll be right back. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends, surprise parties, camps, birthdays. The same way you plan for the important moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Beat the heat and make 4th of July truly monumental at Generation V.
Generation V.
This weekend only, Generation V has incredible deals that'll blow you away. Stock up on select disposables as low as $10 and enjoy 25% off all pet products.
Generation V.
July 1st through 4th, experience monumental savings up to 33% off mods, e-liquid, Delta 8, and more. Generation V with 16 Nebraska locations and a new location at 27th and Superior. GenerationV.com. Vapes contain nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Finally, a good reason to have a smart house. Just say, Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket, and we'll magically start playing. How's it work? Nobody knows. Don't ask questions. The Ticket Water Cooler.
Typically, you kind of think of Nebraska as far as in-state recruiting as might not get the skill position players, but you can pepper in some offensive linemen and maybe a linebacker here and there. This class is led by its in-state skill position players now. I mean, you're thinking down the line, you could 3 or 4 years from now have Daniel Kalen lining up with Davon Holland, Isaiah McMorris, and now Carter Nelson. Those are all your skill positions.
Keeping the highly talented, highly ranked players that are in the state with you at the home state school is a step in the right direction.
Papa, why can't we telegraph while riding a horse? Son, there ain't no one to blame but Jeffro. He was riding old Betsy the Stallion, tip-tapping away at his telegraph, when blam, ran right into the side of the saloon. Well, if Jeffro can't do it, neither should you. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, call 988 for free, confidential, and compassionate support. On July 16th, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is transitioning to 988. There is hope. For 24/7 support, call, text, or chat 988.
Sponsored by Nebraska DHHS, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad.
It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
We are back inside the huddle. I'm gonna tell you this, Harrison. I gotta get with HR, man, and we need a little bit more hours. But before we even get into this quick 5 minutes, I want to send out my condolences to Mark Onwaller and his family. Unfortunate that his wife Jordan passed away. Mark is a great person. Jordan was a great woman, still is. I know he's going through some tough times, but Mark's a part of the family. I want to make sure that I've obviously reached out to him personally, but I want everybody to know that if they could shower him with love, it's not going to fix the problem. It's going to just allow it to be a little bit more of an ease. It's a tough time. Mark's a tough dude. Met some challenges personally for him, face on or head on, and battle through it like a champion. We're going to be there with you all through the way there, Mark, and we're thinking about you, man. I mean, we're just talking about how tired I am, but look, it could be worse.
Yeah,
it really could. And so, for everybody out there, enjoy your friends and family. Try to mend any relationship that's mendable, because nothing's guaranteed, and don't let today be the one like, I really care about Harrison, and stuff like that. Oh, well, I'm mad at Harrison because I don't know, something stupid, something not really worth being mad at, everybody, so I just want to get that out there. But now back to there was a couple quotes, and Thomas Fedoni somehow got interviewed. I was it Sipple that interviewed him?
I don't know if it was Sipple, was it?
Yeah, it was Callahan, I think. Sipple,
I was gonna say,
where he said that him and Matt Rule are two alphas, and so we were on the same mindset. I like it. I mean,
it's better. I don't want him to say I'm a beta. So it's the answer.
Yeah. I mean, that's on the surface.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I play with majority of alphas when we were here. Now, I think there's different levels to being an alpha. And I think when your time comes, that you can really be the alpha, and sometimes you have to be. And I think sometimes, some of the best leaders are the ones that know when they play football, this is what I got to do. And then they can go, like Mike Singletary, he's like a preacher. But when he got on that field, he was alpha. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then you got the opposite where you got guys like Ray Lewis is just the alpha just because of, and he's going to bring you along with him. And then you got another like, Warren Sapp, who's an individual alpha, right? No, nobody really liked him on his team. A lot majority of his teammates hated him. They just dealt with him, but he's an alpha. But there's different levels. And I get what Fedoni was saying. I think my advice with him be say, listen, be seen, not heard. You still have not played. I like your mindset. I like the work. I like the fact that he, after 2 fluke injuries, he hasn't blamed it on Nebraska.
Yeah, he hasn't wavered.
He hasn't wavered. He is all Nebraska. He has gotten bigger. I mean, he has worked, because we've seen some guys on that team previously got injured or showed up grossly overweight. You can't say that about Thomas Fedoni. He's worked. I think he is the one thing I'll take from it. I'll say, and I'll be on the positive, that I'd rather him believe in himself than not. I'd rather him talk to himself to get him to believe in himself than not. 60 days. That's 2 months. Is on. And so it's actually 30 days, really, because that's when you're going to be in the camp.
Yeah.
I mean, once you get into fall camp, it's on. And I'm be really interested to see how he does, because look, we haven't got word that whether Gilbert's going to play or not, right? So you got Fedoni, Borkacher. You're going to get some run. And we're going to need you to produce. And I like it. You know what? I'd rather say, I'm betting on myself. And if he bets on himself and he makes it, then I like him. I like it even more. So they got to give him the ball. You got to get Sims delivering the mail, and he's got to catch, and he's got to do the things he needs to do. I think if he gets some confidence and get some, I think it's going to be the flip side. He gets some confidence, gets some success, he'll do less talking. I think it, because then he'll be like, all right, I know I can play. And then it's just going to be I'm going to show you. And then, you'll get some quotes out of there. But I think, look, man, I'd rather a kid believe in himself. But, I just got to guess that Coach Osborne, man, I would have probably, if we would have said something like that, first of all, we probably would have been called to Coach Osborne's office, but I would have had to stop at Coach Samuel's office or Coach Bowles' office, Coach McBride's office. I don't even know if I would have made it to Coach.
Well, Osborne was on such a different stratosphere too. I mean, like even fans would be like, "You can't be saying that." Like Osborne, was on another level. You could never compare yourself to
at the
him.
end of the day, you got coaches like Dion that are very, boisterous. I mean, Dabo Sweeney, quiet as kept, even though he's a man of faith, but he definitely has some outlandish takes. Kirby Smart does. Jim Harbaugh's out there like that. So it's the players, and then Matt Rule didn't really say anything bad. He's just look. I think Matt Rule's starting to get a lot more confident in his players.
Mm-hmm.
I think
it's coming together. I think he's
like.
To work.
I think he's starting to, and granted, it's not what he wants. I mean, let's be honest, but I think he's starting to become familiar.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's starting to see some things out of him that he didn't see before, and that's as you should. You should be trying to peak. But those are our 2 cents on the quotes of the day. Again, too fast. Again, I want to thank Advanced Medical Imaging for sponsoring our show. They're located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard, 402-484-6677. I'm going to blow up their Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook. They have all types of plans and options to relieve yourself of any pain that you're experiencing. Interventional radiology treatments for pain management that can replace the need for opioids. Most importantly, for me, and other pain medications that often can carry dangerous and uncomfortable side effects. Trust me, I know that, and I've been very, very pleased for their help over there. I want to thank Harrison meeting me here early and going through it. It's like, man, it's like Christmas is come and gone every Sunday, man. Riding over here, he's like, oh, okay. Then either next thing you know, it's like 30, 40 minutes. We're going to have to probably try to throw another hour in here, bust it out, and get some more going, man, because I really enjoy it. Thanks for Harrison for being here and producing. Thanks for you guys listening. Inside the Huddle, Jay Foreman, we are out. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems